History, a premier and paramount priority for progress of a people, arguably the single most important cultural property. It is the great unifier of all societies, from classical to contemporary. It is the shining beacon that restores vision to the blind. It is imperative that we create a unified effort to learn from it, that we may emulate its successes and prevent repeating its mistakes. For without history, we are without purpose. We are without identity. Welcome to the gray area, where we examine history in hindsight. January 21st, 1789, W.H. Brown's Power of Sympathy was published. It was the first American novel to be published. 1853, Dr. Russell L. Hawes patented the envelope folding machine. 1861, the future president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis of Mississippi, resigned from the U.S. Senate, along with 4 other Southern Dixiecrats. 1924, Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin died. Joseph Stalin began a purge subsequently after his death to rid the Soviet Union of rivals for his leadership. 1954, the Nautilus was launched in Groton, Connecticut. It was the first atomic-powered submarine. 1954, the gas turbine automobile was introduced in New York City. 1977, U.S. President Jimmy Carter pardoned all Vietnam War draft dodgers. 1997, Newt Gingrich was fined as the U.S. House of Representatives voted for the first time in history to discipline its leader for ethical misconduct. What did he do? He committed an act of fraud by claiming tax-exempt status for a college course run for political purposes. 2003, it was announced by the U.S. Census Bureau that estimated the Hispanic population had passed the black population for the first time. However, rewinding all the way back to 1824, Osei Tutu Quamina defeats the British at Asamaka, Ashanti. It was the first of the Anglo-Ashanti Wars that began in 1823. In these conflicts, the Ashanti Kingdom faced off with varying degrees of success against the British Empire residing on the coast. The root of the conflict traces back to 1823, when Charles McCarthy, resisting all overtures by the Ashanti to negotiate, led an invading force. The Ashanti defeated and killed McCarthy and took his head for a trophy and swept onto the coast, wiping out his remaining forces. However, it was disease that forced them back. The Ashanti were so successful in subsequent fighting that in 1826, they again moved on the coast. At first, they fought very impressively in an open battle against superior numbers of British Allied forces, including the Nkerians. However, the novelty of British rockets caused the Ashanti army to eventually withdraw. In 1831, a treaty led to 30 years of peace, with the Pra River accepted as the border. However, Britain would violate the treaty, leading to a second war and then a third, until the Ashanti were completely whittled down in the fourth war between the British and Ashanti, when the Ashanti people declined an offer by the British to become a British protectorate. This all after Britain lost 3 wars against the Ashanti people, 2 of which ended in treaties that were at both times violated by Britain. And not wanting to suffer another humiliating defeat by the Ashanti, a third treaty was proposed by Britain and it was declined. Afterwards, not being able to stomach defeat and then a refusal, Britain began employing the Fabian strategy by sending soldiers on night raids to burn Ashanti farmland destroying Ashanti cattle, crops, as well as contaminating the fresh water sources, with the Ashanti near starving and sickness becoming unmanageable. The Ashanti were finally forced to acquiesce to yet another British proposed treaty that made the Ashanti a British protectorate. In contrast to modern times, just imagine you were the owner of an establishment and a group of less than savory henchmen disguised as tourists come by your establishment and see you have something of value within your establishment and then tell you that you owe them protection money. You proceed to beat them up and run them out of your establishment, and they return with a larger group. You defeat them again, and then one fateful night, under the cover of darkness, the henchmen thugs proceed to burn down your establishment. Well, such was the case for the Ashanti people. Today, where the old Ashanti Empire once stood, is now known as modern-day Ghana. You see, history, much like time, waits for no man. It is ultimately up to us to decide whether we choose to make it or be the reason we repeat it. However, no matter what side of it that you stand on, you can only learn from it by looking at history in hindsight.